Well, good evening, councillors. Welcome to the meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee, which is being undertaken virtually in accordance with recently enacted government regulations during the current coronavirus pandemic. Before we start the meeting, can I remind members of the following? Please ensure you mute your microphones when not speaking. Remain focused on the topic being discussed. Try to avoid repeating points which have already been made. Avoid interrupting other councillors and respect the position of the chair. Remember, this meeting is still being broadcast in the normal way via Facebook Live, so it's important that members are aware that the public can hear what is being said and decided on, and that the public can see councillors as well. Please therefore take care to prevent any background distractions. So with these matters in mind, can I call on Mark Devin to do a roll call, please, of all our councillors and officers to ascertain who is in attendance?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, councillors, just please state you're present when I call your name, please. Councillor Wardle.
Present.
Councillor Atkinson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Foggin.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Hannaford, I don't believe has arrived yet. Councillor David Henson.
Yes, present.
Thank you. Councillor Yolanda Henson.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Lamb, I don't believe is here. Councillor Michael Mitchell.
Yes, here.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. I don't believe Councillor Warwick is here, but I believe Councillor Hannaford has just arrived. Can Councillor Hannaford just confirm you're present?
Yes, I'm here, Mark.
Well, thank you. And can I also do a roll call of officers in attendance, please? Just again, just please state present when I call your name. So, Chief Finance Officer Dave Hodgson.
Present.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you. Deputy Chief Finance Officer Michelle White.
Present.
Thank you. Audit Manager Helen Putt.
Yes, I'm here.
Well, thank you very much. And we also have Jackson Murray from Grant Thornton in attendance, and myself and Sharon Sissons, Democratic Services Officers, are in attendance, Chair, and we are quorate to proceed.
Thank you very much, Mark. Well, the first item on the agenda this evening is apologies. I believe Councillor Pattison has sent apologies.
She has, Chair, yes.
Right, yeah, thank you. Right, okay, so the next item of business on agenda item 2 is the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd of July 2020. Are members who were present at the meeting happy to approve these as a correct record of the proceedings on that occasion? Can I have a show of hands, please? Or
Yeah.
okay, thank you. No amendments or anything like that? No. Thank you. And I look forward to signing the minutes in the future when we hopefully get back to some sort of normal situation. So the next item on the agenda is the declarations of interest. That's item 3. And that is members, any disclosable pecuniary interests relate to business on the agenda have not already been included in the register of interest to declare them before any discussion takes place on that item. The next item of business is item 4, Local Government Access to Information Act 1985, the exclusion of the press and public. Well, there aren't any part 2 items on the agenda, so that doesn't really apply. So we move on to item 5, external audit progress reports. And can I ask our representative Jackson Murray, who's the engagement lead from the City Council's external auditors, Grant Thornton, to present the report. Jackson, it's over to you.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening, everyone. So our report on today's agenda is one of our standard progress reports. So that the front part of this sets out the progress we've been making in respect of our responsibilities in relation to the financial statements audit and also the value for money conclusion, and also any other work that we undertake, such as the certification of housing benefits, for example. And the second half of the report then picks up on some of the key sector updates or other information that committee members may find helpful in discharging their roles. Probably page 12 of the public reports pack, so page 4 of our report entitled Progress at the 28th of August 2020, so this was the time of drafting. Essentially, where are we with the audit? So we received the financial statements on the 31st of July, the draft financial statements, that is. That was after the expected date that we were going to get them, but still well before the revised national publication deadline of the 31st of August 2020. So officers produced a draft set of statements and gave those to us well in advance of that publication deadline. Since then, our colleagues on the audit team have begun selecting samples and beginning our audit work on those draft financial statements. Unfortunately, one of the team members who was due to work on the audit has become ill and is no longer able to work on that audit, and we've worked in the background to get some more support for our team, which I'm pleased to say we've now secured and will be joining us imminently. So that's the financial statements audit. So we've begun picking our samples. The aim is still to issue our opinion ahead of the 30th of November target date, and we will aim to report findings in our audit findings report at the next Audit and Governance Committee, which is scheduled for November the 17th. In respect of value for money, our work on this also progresses. The key thing I was going to point out, and we've discussed this at committee previously, is around the new NAO Code of Audit Practice. So whilst this isn't relevant for the 2019-20 financial year that we're currently auditing, in the next financial year, 2020-21, the value for money work will be undertaken under the NAO's new Code of Audit Practice. So this has been enacted, it's now come into force, it's gone through the parliamentary approval process, and the NAO, the National Audit Office, have consulted on their auditor guidance notes that support the code, which set out in more detail the work that we as auditors are required to do. The public consultation for that closed at the beginning of this month, and we expect the final version of the guidance notes imminently. Obviously, once we've got those, we can review those, understand the work that we're being asked to undertake for 2021, and give committee members an update on that work prior to the 2021 financial year. Unsurprisingly, there's various references to COVID-19 throughout the report. Page 14 of our report sets out in a bit more detail some of the areas that we'll be giving perhaps some increased focus as a result of COVID-19 in respect of the financial statements. And the audit will be undertaken remotely as well. So we are working from home. We have a small office presence open again, but the majority of our team continue to work from home, as do the council. So we're embracing some of the technology available to us to make remote audit as good as it can be. There's clearly some benefits to remote audit, but in our experience, we are finding that certain things are taking longer than doing something face to face. So there's a bit of a balancing act there that we just need to keep on top of, and we keep in regular contact with finance officers to ensure that we both know where we are in terms of the audit. I wasn't going to say too much more. The sector update, again, unsurprisingly, there's a number of articles there related to COVID-19 and the impact that's having on the sector. There is on page 19 a National Audit Office report, which is a guide for audit and risk committees on financial reporting and management during COVID-19, which may well be useful to have a review of prior to the next committee, where we'll bring in our findings report, because it brings out some areas that committee members may want to consider as they discharge their roles in respect of those charged with governance and the financial statements. The only other thing that's not in our report before I take any questions is the Redmond review. So this was published last week. So Tony Redmond was tasked with reviewing the local audit market, so audits of local government organisations, and his report has now been released into the public. It's quite a long one, so it's over 80 pages. There's a number of recommendations within it, and what I was going to propose was to just give committee members a bit of a summary of what some of those recommendations are and what's coming out of Sir Tony Redmond's review. Before I do that, I will just pause and ask if there's any questions on anything that's included in our report before I do so.
Okay, Jackson, thanks very much for that. Any questions, Yolanda?
Yes, thank you. What I was going to ask our officer is, have we caught up to date? Has the Audit Commission caught up to date, because they were so far behind? How far behind are they now? And is it feasible they'll be they'll be caught up to make sure that our audit is in order?
So is this the external audit we're talking about here? So the audit of the financial statements. I think the last committee we came to, we gave an update report which said we'd done our planning procedures, but what we would have done in a normal year is also undertake some early testing of transactions that feed into the financial statements. That was postponed because that visit coincided with the fact that we were under national lockdown. We've moved some of our scheduling around, given that our team don't just audit Exeter City Council, they audit other local government bodies as well. So in terms of when we received the draft accounts, we've rescheduled some of that at the beginning of the period. We are now, I would say, on track and hopeful that we will be finished by the end of November to give our audit opinion.
Yeah, I really wasn't talking. I was talking in general of the particular, your company itself, because it didn't have a very good press reports 6 months ago, because you were so far behind and you were either not lack of experienced staff, and it's nothing to do with COVID. It was to do with so far the company was so far behind in auditing larger companies.
Okay,
that's what I was after.
Okay, so in the public sector, you're right. There were a number of local government bodies that the audits weren't finished by the end of July, which is the date that statute says accounts need to republish. It doesn't, importantly, it doesn't say they need to be audited by the end of July, but that's the target date that was worked to within the sector. We have now completed the vast majority of those 18-19 audits. The ones that still are outstanding are due to kind of significant issues at those organisations. And it's fair to say that you're correct, Grant Thornton didn't deliver a number of audits, as did all of the other audit suppliers within the market. And interestingly, that's one of the things that Sir Tony Redmond picks up in his review and makes recommendations about. His words are around the local audit market being fragile, and the fact that it's not attractive to other audit firms. So other audit firms don't want to or can't enter the market. And similarly, there's a real challenge in retaining experienced talent and experienced in local government audit, not experienced in audit, because there is a clear difference between auditing a commercial entity and auditing a local government organisation. They are two different things, and clearly within Grant Thornton, I'm part of the public sector specific team, so I just audit public sector clients, and all of my colleagues do the same. But to Sir Tony Redmond, as I said, and a number of other people, PSAA in their report, which is one of the articles in our progress report, similarly points to the fact that it's a really challenging market to retain talent and get experienced people to work in local government audit. I think, can I hand on heart say all of our audit opinions will be delivered by the end of November this year? I can't say that, no, because there'll be some audits where there's events or conditions or issues, some inside of our control, a large number outside of our control, that mean we won't hit that deadline. But as a firm, we're absolutely committed to delivering audits, but what we don't want to do is deliver an audit at the end of July to a substandard quality level. I would much rather deliver an audit to the end of August, but I've done that audit properly and give you, as those charged with governance, the assurances that you need before you approve the accounts, than try to deliver to kind of a deadline or a timetable that means corners may have to be cut. I'm not saying that happens, obviously, but the timetable is one of the other points in Sir Tony Redmond's review that says actually that timetable isn't workable, and that the sector has shown that it's not workable. 40% of audits, he quotes around that number, weren't delivered Obviously, they weren't all Grant Thornton audits, but a number of those audits were Grant Thornton audits.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Councillor Hannaford, Chair.
Councillor
Thank you.
Hannaford.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure if my camera's on or not. I'll just press another button. Hopefully that might work. There we are. Very good report, Chair. And the officers may be able to just advise me what the protocol is. But I'd like to actually propose that we take pages 20 and 21 as a recommendation back to full council and perhaps then back to our MPs and government. That's relating to kickstarting the housing market. I think there's a good section there about public housing being built and also ways to help kickstart the private sector and encourage more growth and development there, which I think we ought to be supporting as a committee. And on page 21, the bullet points about the place-based growth, which I think are very sensible and things that we could all sign up to cross-party. So Chair, I'd like to move, if I'm allowed to, that we turn those two sections into a recommendation back to full council for further debate and support. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Right, is there a seconder for that proposal?
Well, happy to second
can
that.
we do
I'll
that?
second that.
Happy to second.
Yes, we can do this before the council, Sharon?
I'm not
Can we-
sure, I'm afraid. I would just have to check. I think we just have to have a quick word. I mean, essentially, you're lifting pages 20 and 21 of a report from Grant Thornton. I don't know if that's an issue for Grant Thornton either. If you forgive me, Chair, we'll just have a look, or whether
Yes
that
or no,
could be the opportunity to have a further report.
Yeah, so
If that's
I mean,
something that's not time limited.
the pages in our report link to the full publicly available reports, so that is publicly available information. And so internally, I'm not sure what the protocol would be, but it can cause an issue. It's public.
Is this the Redmond report you're talking about?
No. It's
No,
pages
it's
20 and 21 of this report. It's some Grant Thornton and Localis
Yes,
studies.
there's one with Localis, and then there's one with the County Councils Network.
Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah.
I mean, I feel sure that if members wish to obviously debate this at a greater level, I'm sure that they could. They wouldn't be excluded from doing that, but whether it's appropriate.
Chair, if it helps, I mean, maybe some wording along the lines that we welcome and support these conclusions, and maybe that's a way of helping. But
Yes,
I think anything we can do to support local businesses and house builders, I think is important.
I certainly will make reference to that in the minutes. Great reference, and include that in the noting of the report, Chair. If that's acceptable to you.
Yes. Okay.
Would that be acceptable to you, Councillor Hannaford?
Yes, I think that'd be
Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
I
Yvonne,
wouldn't like to see it as a specific recommendation from this committee, but I do think there are some very interesting ideas in all of those reports, and I would agree with Councillor Hannaford in that respect. I think that this is probably better dealt with by way of perhaps member briefings and discussions to see what relevant aspects of it that we could take out of it, which could be then taken up by scrutiny committees. And I think that's the way that I would recommend that we proceed with this.
Chair, if you find it acceptable, I was just going to make great reference to it in the minutes to note specifically, and thank you, Councillor Atkinson, for your comments. I'll discuss with officers how best we can take this forward.
Okay. Councillor Foggin.
Yeah, I personally would like to see it taken forward for the simple reason we've got out of such a mess after the last World War and the one before that with house building and that sort of thing. And I think this is quite an important situation personally, and I would like to see it taken forward if possible.
Okay, thank you for that. Sharon, I think you get the drift of what we're asking for here.
Chair.
They want to progress the ideas here. Yeah.
But if you're happy when eventually you get to the recommendations, just to accept the noting with my...
Yeah, okay, yes. Do other members agree with that course of action?
Yes, that's fine.
Yes. Okay.
Councillor
Right,
Mitchell,
okay,
I
any
believe, may
further?
wanted to speak.
Right, okay. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, totally agree. I just think of a way to forward this. Could it be not something we recommend to be placed on an agenda of a future executive meeting, and that way it then comes through to full council for full debate?
I'd be happy to support that, Chair. I think there's a danger of it getting lost in the system when we need a sense of urgency.
Okay. Right, can we take that on board then, Sharon?
So if I could just have a recommendation. So we're obviously, sorry, I don't know if you'd finished, Mr. Murray, with your report and the discussion. So have we finished all of the debate?
I don't think we've actually finished all. It's on this particular point.
Okay.
I'm trying to sort of get a clear idea where we go with this. You're going to make a note, Sharon, weren't you, on the...
I am.
Yes, yes, that's fine. And are you
Chair.
in agreement with that, Councillor Mitchell? Yes.
Yes,
We'll
sorry, I
make
thought you were talking to Sharon and myself. Just
We'll make
as
sure
I
this
think
is
it should
taken
go
up
through.
as a
We should try to
matter.
point it in the direction of the executive, so at least it's picked up in that way and comes to full council
Okay.
for full debate.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, subject to that noting then in the minutes, any other questions on this report? No? Okay. So we note it subject to that then, thank you.
So are we just
If you
seeing
want me
a
to just give a brief
show of
summary of
hands?
Redmond.
Oh, yes, sorry, yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yep,
so-
okay, we've dealt with that. So on to the Redmond report, yes.
Okay, so it was released last week, so it was released on the 8th of September in terms of his findings and recommendations. As I said, it's over 80 pages long and there's 23 recommendations. So if councillors do want to have a read, please feel free. I'll try and summarise the kind of the findings and the recommendations as best I can. And please, Dave or any other colleagues, do jump in for the ones that I'll no doubt miss, given there's 23. So I think probably the one that's catching the headlines the most, I suppose, is the creation of a new body, a new organisation called the Office of Local Audit and Regulation. And so what this new body will be responsible for is regulation of the local audit market, the award of contracts to external auditors. It will be responsible for some of the registration of firms that's currently undertaken by other bodies. And what that's actually going to do is move the functions performed or elements of functions performed by PSAA, so public sector audit appointments, who currently appoint external auditors in local government. Sections of the ICAEW, the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales, who deal with the registrations. So to sign a local government audit opinion, you need to be registered with the ICAEW, and they deal with the individual and firm registrations. The Financial Reporting Council, who are our current regulators, and also the National Audit Office, who are kind of the governmental body and do much of the central government audit contracts, but also release think pieces such as the guide for audit committees in COVID that was included on our paper earlier. So that new body will oversee the audit market, the local audit market, local government audit market. There's other recommendations around strengthening governance, and I think a key theme throughout the report is around governance and the requirement for governance within local government. So elements of that, so some of the recommendations look at formalising meetings between the external auditor and senior officers, whether that's chief exec, FD, etc. So clearly we undertake a number of regular liaison meetings currently, but it's formalising that process even further. There's a recommendation around external audit reporting annually to council, rather than necessarily just through the audit committee. A recommendation to move the timetable back to 30th of September from 31st of July. There's commentary in there around audit fees and a recognition that audit fees are too low in local government and local audit. Again, a recognition around the focus of some of our work, especially around financial statements and the complexity of financial statements, but also the time that's expected for officers to input and then us as auditors to review things around the valuation of land and buildings, the valuation of pensions, which are things that we've discussed in committee previously and feature in our audit plan at the moment, but a recognition that SIPFA should review the accounting requirements for those areas in an attempt to simplify them. A recommendation to create a new document, so alongside the financial statements, the set of accounts that you see, a new reconciled accounts summary, which is kind of 10 to 12 pages long in some of the examples, which would be audited, and that would be more accessible to members of the public to show what the council's original budget was and actually how did it compare, what did it spend its money on, rather than the 100+ pages of financial statements that we currently have, which, to be honest, can be quite impenetrable to members of the public. So a more simplified account summary. There's probably other recommendations that I've not picked out. Those are some of the key ones, certainly that I can remember. I'm just looking if there's anything else that I've missed from your point of view, Dave or Michelle. Dave has his hand.
Can I just
Yes,
add
please.
a couple of notes to this, and I'll put it from a local authority viewpoint. One of the key recommendations that Jackson didn't state on governance is, and Sir Tony Redmond was quite strong on this today, was consideration being given to the appointment of at least one independent member suitably qualified to the audit committee of each council. So that would if we took this forward, that would require us to identify preferably a qualified accountant from within the area to come and join you on the audit and governance committee, and I'm sure you may have a view on that. In terms of the audit, you may also have views on there being a new body called the Office of Local Audit and Regulation, which he assures us does not replace the Audit Commission, but will take over some of the role that the Audit Commission did used to provide. Most notably, there's no suggestion that they will take over doing audit, which was a fundamental part of Audit Commission. It will continue to be done by the firms. There was a strong feeling in the report that it was a cost versus quality issue, and I'm not sure that's right. I'm going to stick up for our external audit colleagues. Yeah, I don't think there's any question that the quality wasn't there. It was just the ability to deliver the quality within the time scale, which, and as I've said before, my feeling, and they did make reference to this, or some of the accountants did similarly, and hopefully some of the recommendations will address this. The fact that they're currently working to the Financial Reporting Council, whose purpose is to protect shareholders and to ensure that financial information in the commercial world is accurate. Working to those same rules mean that our auditors concentrate on the most material figures in our accounts. But for us, our statutory overrides make them less meaningful to taxpayers than many other figures. That's something that I hope that this will really address. And if the moves from them to this Office of Local Audit and Regulation, then hopefully that will help us to ensure that the audit is more focused on things that matter to the taxpayer, rather than following a process that's there to protect shareholders. And in terms of this, I'm not sure there's anything else I wanted to draw out at this stage. Just to note, from a finance point of view and from a council point of view, at a point where you need to deliver £6 million worth of savings, you will note it's likely to increase the cost of audit, and you're likely to have increased workload on your accountants to deliver another financial statement on top of the statutory financial statements, which we will absolutely still have to do the 100 pages of unintelligible accounts in line with international financial reporting standards, and then on top of that do this simpler statement as well. At a point where we're going to be looking to reduce our spend across the council, it is something that you do need to note.
Yes, okay, thank you. Anyone else got any comments on that? On the point about an independent auditor just being on the committee, any sort of instant views on that?
Councillor Atkinson, Chair.
Yes, Yvonne. Yeah, thank you.
Well, apparently a large number of local authorities already do that, and it would be interesting to know what the experience of those is through having somebody who is an accountant. We have had suitably qualified members of this committee in the past on it, and perhaps it's before we take a position on this, we'd need to take steps to review our own membership and performance against the scope of audit committees in local government, which is, to do the annual governance statement, review work of internal audit, look at risk and insurance and value for money, as external audit, partnership governance, as well as the external audit that we have done. So there are a lot of things that you can do that don't necessarily require accountants. And we do have the advice of our officers. And, the question comes then is, as a committee, are we challenging our officers enough sufficiently to hold them to account so that we as members and members of the public can trust the financial conduct of this authority? So there are big questions to be asked before we go down that. And I think perhaps we could do a review at some point of the way we operate here.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments?
I think Councillor Mrs. Henson had a hand up.
No, I think there's a long way before we can, this will come up for discussion in one of the committees, and I'm sure which we've already discussed that. So I'll leave my comments till then.
Okay, thank you. Jackson, earlier you referred to the National Audit Office report that's recently come out. For the guide for audit and risk committees, and you were I think you mentioned something about a review of that.
I was just suggesting, so as normal in our progress report, there's a number of briefing papers, as Councillor Hannaford picked out a couple earlier as well. The one is specifically aimed at audit and risk committees produced by the NAO, so it has a public sector focus. So again, if members of the committee wanted to review that and pick up on some of the insight and thoughts of the NAO, what audit committees should and shouldn't be doing in respect of COVID and financial reporting, that might be a good place to look as well.
Yes, okay. This is a question for David, really, following that. Do you have any views on that, David, as that National Audit Report, perhaps the committee might take the opportunity to review that at some point?
You could. What I would suggest, given that hopefully at the next committee meeting, we'll be reviewing the accounts and you'll be looking to approve them. The address, the web address is embedded within the report that Jackson's presented. If you feel it's helpful, we could perhaps have a member briefing for Audit and Governance Committee members, if you would like, or you're all welcome to look at the report and follow up any questions you may have with me. Either way.
Okay, yeah. Would members like to have a special meeting to talk about that? It seems a very good idea, I think. Michael Mitchell, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. I was just suggesting before Dave came in there, I think we need a summary of these reports because ideally we are lay people dealing sometimes with quite technical issues. And while we rely on our expertise of our Exeter officers, I think it would be helpful as a member to have a collation of these documents in councillor speak, shall we say, and either to be presented at our next meeting or to be done separately as a briefing meeting.
Okay. Any other views on what Michael said? Well, so what you're suggesting, David, wait until the November meeting, the next accounts, and then perhaps consider going forward on with these other paperwork, this other paperwork, to review how we behave and so on.
Yeah, this was more particularly in respect of the COVID-19 report. That will probably be pertinent to the next meeting. So it could be. May I suggest I do a summary at the start of the meeting before you get into expressing your mind before you.
Okay, that's very Okay, that's helpful. Thank you for that. Okay, but anything further on the external auditor report? I can't see any hands up. Okay, thank you for that. So we note all of that report. So we move on to the item 6 internal audit progress reports. Helen Putz, to present it, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and good evening, everybody.
Yeah.
So this is our progress report against the plan, and our progress against the plan is good. However, we're not on target with the plan due to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. The details of this are in 8.1 of the report, but to summarise those impacts, we've done a lot of unplanned work, including assisting with the administration of the COVID-19 business grants, and assisting with the stock takes and inventory checks at the leisure facilities in preparation of the transfer back in-house. We've also had, during the lockdown period, we had redeployed 2 of our team members to the Wellbeing Hub to assist with that. And then following that, one of the team members was furloughed for a 6-week period. And also our regular audit work was quite difficult with the service areas having to focus on critical work and support to residents during the lockdown. So to put this into some sort of context, we'd normally allow sort of around 30 days for a contingency plan of unplanned work. However, to date, I think we've probably used about 107 days. So you can see that it's taken quite a chunk out of the normal audit work that we would be able to do. So as a result of that, we're going to need to make some changes to the audit plan that we'd originally approved by this committee in March. And Appendix A of my report shows our progress against the work that we've done to date, and also the changes that we propose and seek your approval for. I don't know whether we want to have a look at Appendix A and if there are any questions relating to that.
Yes, thank you, Helen. Appendix A, any questions on that, please?
Are we on item 6? Can I ask?
Yes, the internal audit.
Sorry.
Yes, this is on Appendix A at the moment, Yolanda.
All right, I'm so sorry.
That's page 29.
That's the progress of the plan to date.
Pack.
Yeah. Yeah. If I may, can I just point out that the changes to the audit plan are to those audits that are highlighted in yellow. That's where
sorry, I should have pointed that out. Sorry, thank you, Dave.
That's all right. Okay. Right, did you have anything on that, Yolanda, at all?
Well, is this the hub? Is this the
No, that's Appendix C. That's
Oh,
Appendix
all right,
C. We'll come
fine.
on to that in a minute.
All right. Fine.
Okay, thank you. Right, no questions on Appendix A then.
All right,
No.
thank you.
Right, Helen, if you care to go to B, please.
Okay, yeah. So at Appendix B,
Yes.
we look at the significant governance issues as identified in the annual governance statement. And directors and officers have provided updates to each of these issues. There isn't anything of concern that I think I need to draw to your attention, but I don't know whether anybody's got any questions relating to that particular document. I think everything looks fairly straightforward as far as I'm concerned.
Yes. Right. Thank you for that. Any questions on Appendix B? Oh, can't see any. Okay. So
Okay.
Appendix C, I think now, Helen.
Okay, so in Appendix C, we have the inclusion of the internal audit report on the Pinho Community Hub grant. And this has been included as per the order by the Information Commissioner. We've included a copy of the report. I think we have already received 1 or 2 questions on this, and I think Dave's got some answers to the questions.
Okay.
When appropriate, Chair, I'm quite happy to read out the questions received from Councillor Mitchell, if you wish.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Sharon. Right, thank you, Helen, for that. That's Appendix. So Appendix C is before you now. I understand there are some questions. I haven't seen them yet. So any questions before those particular batch of questions?
Well,
Yes, Yolanda.
I was going, well, it's me that's probably the one that was, and Mrs. Thompson who brought this. But this is not, well, there's 2 things here that troubles me is the original letter I saw, well, that the councillors saw privately with the solicitor. This is not even reported here at all. This is can I say, I don't know what to say really, because I was presuming the letter that after the inquiry was into it would have been public, it would have been allowed for councillors to be seen. Both the 3 councillors involved in this went to the solicitor and it's nowhere to be seen. This is not the letter that was the original letter. And to be perfectly honest, I feel that this is going to be whitewashed. There was nothing, what you are talking about here is how it became, and we all know that the hub was going to go ahead, but it is how it was set up and how the committee was arranged that was clearly at fault here. And there's nothing said here. There's a mention of it, but the actual original letter and the 151 officer clearly had seen this, and so did the solicitor, and it was damning. The fact was that when nobody was against the hub or how much money it was getting, it is how that money was set up and who was running with it, and were they in conflict of their own hub. The same people were dealing with the money, the hub, and that's what, and the council, and it's the councillors that were involved in this. It seemed to me that it's the whole thing's been whitewashed, and I really want some answers on this. Where was the original letter from the audit and the 151 officer? And he clearly stated somewhere along the line that the council really should alter the view that or the way they were setting up these hubs, else we would set ourselves, we could be caught over the coals ourselves by not doing it right. I haven't put that in the right way around, but it was never against a hub being set up in Pinho. It was the way it was done, and that's, I leave it at there unless David wants to say something.
Can I just come in, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, yes, please. Just one moment. We have had, as I understand it, some questions. Is it Councillor Mitchell that's put some questions in?
Yeah.
Is that
Mr. Chair, I'm more than happy.
Sharon? Are the questions from Councillor Mitchell?
Yes.
The ones that have been put in.
I think it'd be helpful
Yes,
if I read
okay.
my questions out, Mr. Chair,
Indeed.
and then other people might want to contribute or add further questions, and then whoever's responding can respond in total to all of us.
Please do. Please.
I'm happy to
yes.
to read them out. As I say, my questions are based as being only a new.
Councillor Mitchell. Sorry, Councillor Mitchell. Dave Hodgson just wanted to speak.
All right.
I think that for the order of the committee, it would be really beneficial if I could take each question at once. Otherwise,
okay,
there's the risk that I'll get overwhelmed by questions from everyone and then be in an impossible situation for answering.
Well done.
That's fine. Okay, David, if you care to answer Mrs. Henson's questions.
If that's okay. So Councillor Henson, I wasn't in attendance at the meeting you had with the monitoring officer in respect of this report, but I can assure you that this report, other than for the redactions of names, is precisely the report that was produced by internal audit at that time. It's the internal audit report that the Information Commissioner and also our external auditors recommended should be made available to the committee. It is the report in its entirety, except for those redactions. I'm not entirely sure of the letter. I'm not aware of the letter that you're referring to. But this is the report that the Information Commissioner stated we should make available to the committee. The redactions have been made in order to ensure that this can be a public paper, so that it wasn't a part 2 paper. And that's the only changes that have been made to the internal audit report that the monitoring officer went through with yourself and other members.
Yes. Now, can I come back, Chairman? This report is 2019. The letters that myself, David, and Mrs. Thompson would be referring to would have been at least 18 months before that, and this is not the letter at all. It was quite a different letter and quite a damning letter, to be perfectly honest. And I thank you for correcting me, Dave. It's a question of what I don't like is that you're presuming or passing off that this is the audit letter that was the one that there was a great deal of concern about. Let's put it concern. And it's not. The concern I have is that it's not been, the original one has not been reported. And that is what is, I feel, being whitewashed. Thank you, Chairman.
So
Thank
Chair,
you. David, would you like to come back on that? Yes.
Could I just bring in Helen Putt? Because I'm not aware of another audit report into this.
It's not an audit report. There was a letter.
A letter
from the auditors.
Okay. I'll have to look into that and report back to committee.
Yes. Okay.
In respect of the way this was set up, I need to make this absolutely clear because it's not correct in this internal audit report, and it's not correct anywhere else. This budget was approved by full council. Only full council has the powers to allocate funding, and this report went through full council and was approved that way. It wasn't approved in any private meetings. It wasn't approved by scrutiny resources. It wasn't approved by the executive. It was approved by full council. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find the voting on that, and I'm not sure whether Democratic Services are aware of the votes as to who voted for or against it. But it was fully approved by full council, as it properly should be. And I think it's really important that we always remember that it wasn't done in any underhand way. It went properly through council and was allocated.
Can I come in? Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I come in on Dave for a moment? Because it wasn't.
Oh, one moment.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just before you do, David.
Yeah.
Councillor Mitchell did put forward some questions.
Oh, all right. Yes. Sorry.
Before
Yeah,
the
go on.
meeting.
Yeah.
No. But if it's directly, if your point, David, is directly sort of to add something to what Yolanda Henson has said.
Yes,
it is.
Yes.
Yes, it is.
He was there.
Yeah. All I was going to say that the system that we've got for doing community grants at the moment is ideal. No problems at all. It works straight. We know exactly what happens and how it goes on. This one wasn't applied properly from the word go. And that's what we're really on about. And when we saw the original papers, it was a real mess. And there was covers up here, there, everywhere. Funds were going to private banks and all sorts of problems. And that's why it was raised originally. That's why there's some concern. So it's a little bit deeper than what Dave seems to think it is, but it is just a little bit deeper.
Thank you.
Thank you,
right.
Chair. If I may.
Yes, please.
Councillor Henson, you're absolutely right that because we didn't have the funds available within the original grants process, this came separately through to full council as a separate request for funding.
That's right.
And you're absolutely right. The process in place was not as strong as we would like it to be, which led to the grants review, which has led to a whole new system being put in place. That still doesn't negate the council resolution that awarded £100,000 to Pinho Community Hub.
No, Dave, that's it in a nutshell. We're not arguing about that. That's good. We understand that. That's right.
Right. Okay, Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank both Councillor Hensons for the background information, which wasn't in the report. As a new councillor, all I can submit are my questions based on the written report in front of me. So I thank them for all that very interesting background information. So some of my questions might appear a little oblique, but they are based upon the report that we've got in front of us. So if I could just go over question one. What is the status of the person or persons who drafted the report? Because no names are mentioned on it at the end. And in the light of the very limited recommendations within the report, what is the detailed explanation for the amount of redaction that's taken place?
Okay, thank you for that.
Shall I deal with the one?
Before I start, could I also thank Councillor Mitchell for giving us the questions in advance? It was really helpful to be able to get a full response.
Don't expect them to be.
Thank you very much. So actually, I think this one is an error in redaction. And the author of the report is one of the council's audit managers. Unfortunately, it's Helen Kelvey, not Helen Putt, who's present tonight. But it is one of the council's audit managers. The reason for the redaction, by their nature, internal audit reports are designed for management to support improvements to the internal control environment, and as such are not normally intended to be publicly available. So the only elements that have been redacted relate to individuals who are no longer employed or aren't current members of the council. And that's been done so that we can ensure it's a public Part 1 appendix, as opposed to putting it in Part 2 and therefore only members would see it and the public wouldn't. So we wanted it to be in public and be out in the open. And to do that, we've just taken out some of the names of those who are no longer members or officers of the council.
Thank you. I come to the second question. The report is dated the 4th of June 2019. In the light of the nature of the issues raised, which Councillor Henson has identified as well, has it been considered by the council or its committees prior to this meeting?
So the short answer is no. And what I would say is Audit and Governance Committee is absolutely the right committee to consider this report, because it's a matter of governance and a matter of internal audit and their view on the control environment. So this is the right committee, but it didn't come previously to this. And that's because, as you'll be aware, you've been on the Audit and Governance Committee. We don't, as a matter of course, put full audit reports to the committee. We normally provide summaries of them. But this has been recommended by the Information Commissioner and by our external auditors on this occasion, and therefore that's why the full report is available to you. As members of the committee, you do have the right to ask to see any audit report.
Thank you. Third question. This £100,000 grant was not approved or subjected to the normal procedures of the council regarding community grants in force at that time. What assurances can you give that this is an isolated case?
So as I mentioned earlier, we didn't have it sufficient in the budget for community grants to go through the normal grants process that was in place at that time, and therefore it was brought forward as a wholly separate report through to full council for approval, because we needed funding properly approved. So this report went past all members of the council who were members at the time, and they all had the opportunity to comment and give their opinion and indeed vote on the approval of the funding. So it was set up from a budget under authority from council and not from the grants budget, and hopefully members should make themselves aware of all budgets that are approved by full council. If something doesn't go through the normal procedures, that's because we need additional budget over and above the budget that's set for the grants committee, and therefore anything like that would come through council, and members would have the opportunity to comment, approve or reject.
Thank you. Question 4. The report mentions no supporting documentary evidence to support this grant. Is it that there was no documentary evidence, or that it has subsequently disappeared? The grant was approved at the meeting of the executive on the 11th of October 2016. Why was no mention made at this time in the officer's report to lack of documentation?
So my view is that was clear. It was a short report, and members were welcome to ask for anything further, and indeed they could have held the recommendation pending any information they required. What I would say at this time was that the purpose of this grant was to provide funding to build a community asset in an area using funding that was derived from house building, and we were seeking or members were seeking to deliver a community asset in an area that was taking a large amount of new homes at that time. Significant housing was being built there, and that was the stated intention of the government's new homes bonus scheme, was to support communities taking new housing. So, I mean, I think regardless of whether you think that it was handled correctly or not, I think the principle of what was trying to be achieved was something that, as Section 151 officer, I felt was in keeping with the principle of new homes bonus. But as I said previously, it is acknowledged that the grant process did require strengthening, and that has since taken place.
Yeah.
Thank you. Question 5, just point, there's only 6, so people to panic. The report states that 2 officers involved had by now left the authority. Were they contacted in regard to this audit report, and what discussions, if any, took place with serving or former councillors who were involved?
None. So no, they weren't contacted, and no discussions were taking place. Thank
you. Can we have an update on the current status of this grant, and if council property or land has now been formally leased to the applicants?
So prior to the closing of last year's accounts, so in 2019-20, one further payment of £22,264 was made. That was before we received the recommendations from external audit. And now that we've received those recommendations from external audit, we will seek to act upon those before making any further payments. And for your final question, no lease arrangements have yet been entered into.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Trish Oliver.
Am I allowed a question or a point of clarity or both? Sorry, it's my first time at this committee and I just don't want to get it wrong.
I don't see why you can't ask a question. Others have.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, obviously I don't know the history of this. And I've forgotten what my question is now, but I had one. Damn. Oh, I know. No. I don't have any question, but I have two things of clarity that I think are relative. Okay, irrelevant. Sorry, let me get my head together. Thank goodness it's not being live streamed, or it probably is. Okay. So, well, the first thing is that Dave Hodgson has just mentioned in summary that he thought it was in keeping with the principle of the new homes bonus to be awarding money to an area that had taken a significant amount of house building. And I couldn't help thinking that principle could also be interpreted as intent and spirit. And I think we've heard a lot this week about how the intent and spirit is more important than what's actually the rules. My second point is that we've referred a lot to the community grants and that this didn't follow that process. And Councillor Henson said, well, now we have a very good process. But as a point of clarity, as I understand it, the only grants we have now are the £1,000 COVID-19 action grants, which are likely to end at the end of the month, and the ward grants. And I think that most of the other grants are put on hold. And I think it's extremely likely that funding is going to be allocated more in this way again. So it is something that I think we ought to be very clear on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Well, Councillor Atkinson, Chair.
Yeah, Councillor Atkinson.
Yeah, very interesting discussion. Like Councillor Oliver, I wasn't a member of this council when this went through. So I have been trying to establish what has happened, whether the problems that occurred have been acted on, and where we go forward on this. So I was very heartened to hear from Councillor Henson that the new grant system is wonderful, it's great, he's got no problems with that, and therefore there is a suggestion that this situation couldn't happen again. And it seems that the only failure within this, with what happened here, was the fact that no written application was made, and that would not now happen again. But there was clearly some process which did result in a decision being made by full council. And I assume at that time that a written report must have gone to full council so that members could have made a decision on it. So whilst a written application from the applicants didn't go in, there must have been a written report from officers on what the money was going to be used for. This is not my area. So it's been approved, but I have taken the opportunity to go online and see fantastic planning application for a wonderful community hub, which I think is going to be either in the process of being built or will be built, and it's going to be a wonderful community facility. So it seems to me that any offence from not having a written application is being more than made up by the fact that the community is going to be well served by a grant of £100,000, which came from the homes bonus. Sorry, what's going on?
I can't clear.
Yeah. So that it's, you know, there's been a failure of process, but the outcome is wonderful. We've got a wonderful grant system. We've got a wonderful community hub here. So we've learned from the mistakes, but we are going to be delivering something from the community. So I think that whilst this report is welcome to give us insight into the past, I think we should put it behind us now and move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on Appendix C? Right, okay. Helen, did you?
Whoa. I would just make sure that I would like, where has that letter gone that we had received and where we had seen when I was with the solicitor, with then Councillor Thompson, myself and the solicitor and David Henson. We were, that letter should be open to the councillors. If I'm not asking for a public, but it should not have disappeared. And quite frankly, I don't like letters that I have seen that suddenly disappear. Because that's setting up suspicion of something trying to go underneath the wires. And I take on what Councillor says, and I take on with Dave, because he worked his socks off trying to sort it out. But the point is, I still am adamant that that letter should go on file on this account, wherever it is.
David Hodgson, David, did you you'd like to come back on that?
Might I suggest that I go and have a conversation with the monitoring officer and identify the letter and move this forward? I'll report back to committee.
Thank you.
I would be grateful, Dave.
No problem.
Thank you very much.
As long as it's minutes.
No further questions. I can't. Yes, can I just inquire of the minute on this? It's the discussion will no doubt be noted.
Chair, I've just taken a full account of all of the discussion.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Thank you. Any further questions on Appendix C? No? Okay. Well, in that case, the members note the contents of the internal audit report for the first quarter of this year, and secondly, the amendments to the 2020-21 internal audit plan be approved. Is that okay?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So,
okay.
Do we require just a confirmed vote on that one by roll call?
Yes.
Yes. Just show of. Can we have a show? Well, yes. Show of hands again, please.
Put your hand forward.
Show of hands.
Councillor Hannaford, how are you voting?
4.
4. Thank you. That looks unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Well, right. So we move on to item 7 then, which is the review of the corporate governance risk register. Would Helen, would you care to introduce this one, please? Thank you.
Thank you. So this is a review of the corporate risk register. I think it's all fairly straightforward this time. There have been no updates or changes to the corporate risk register since your last meeting. So really, I don't know whether there are any questions that I can take back to the officers on the corporate risk register. I've not received any questions relating to it.
A question from Councillor Foggin.
Yeah, I've not got a question, but what I'm asking is, could we have it in a bigger font, because it's using the magnifying glass to read it. You know, it's very difficult. Even if it's printed the opposite way, you know, you could print it long ways instead of that way. And I'd like to have it in a bigger font in future.
Okay, we'll look into the way that it's presented. Obviously, at normal meetings, we provide a printed copy on an A3 sheet, but it's more difficult with these type of meetings. with the smaller print.
Yes,
But we'll bear that in
okay.
mind and have a look at it.
Councillor Henson, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I was just asking, and I would like the officer's opinion on this. At risk, we've never seen anything that we have boats going up and down that are licensed, I believe, going up and down the canal that goes down to the X locks. That go up and down. I think they're called booze cruise and things like that. So under the COVID, is there a risk, or does it come under us, or does it go under some other form? It's been asked of me by a member of the public that in fact the amount of people on board these boats, are they controlled or are they exempt? I think I know the answer, but we've never seen anything that's at risk on that on our papers, and I'm sure there must be something that belongs to what it comes under the Exeter flag because of the canal. And I'm wondering if that's cropped up before, but it's several people now has commented on the same principle of, are we responsible for that boat, and is Exeter responsible for the because I know we're responsible for the canal, so are we responsible for the boat on that canal, and does it come under here?
Councillor
David,
Ward would,
could you throw any light on that?
Chair, if I may, I'll need to go back to our harbour master and confirm our responsibilities. It's on the canal and not the X, is it?
It's on the canal. They call them the booze cruise. I think they go out into the river, into the X as well, but they start off on the bridge.
So in terms of the X, in terms of the X, we have absolute authority for the river itself. In terms of the licensing, let me check with the harbour master and environmental health about our responsibilities for ships that are on there and they're about.
And the canal part.
Yeah, absolutely. With COVID-19 restrictions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? No. Okay, so we note the report then, members. Yes, can I show of hands just to note it?
Yeah, show of hand, David, over here.
Show of hands. Thank you.
Over here.
Right, well, that brings us to the end of the meeting, except to the date of the next meeting, I believe, is the 18th of November. And thank you everyone for attending, and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.